good evening, good night, wherever in the world today. This is the New Day News, and I'm your host, Dr. Sophia Catherine Woodley Von Rothschild. Today, I want to take the time to talk about some personal observations that I've been seeing going on for the past few years. I want to bring to your attention an individual named Billy Carson. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Billy Carson has been on many podcasts and YouTube channels, and he speaks very boastful of himself. Speak of that he's one of the foremost experts in ancient texts and ancient manuscripts, and he has a large following worldwide. However, he has made some very extraordinary claims, and as the Dr. Albert Einstein once said, extraordinary claims required extraordinary proofs. For example, he has claimed that the ancient text disproves the Bible, which is pretty boastful, I would say, and pretty arrogant. However, as people of learning, um, we always say we must be very measured in our pronouncements and in our response. We always must be a little bit more um, dignified and humble when we make statements. However, when we evaluate his claims, we see that he's just totally off his rockers, to put it mildly. For example, just for the record, I have a PhD in physics, and I also have a doctorate in social science and history, economics, and politics, and theology. Okay, and no, I do not know everything. And for me, I see myself as a student. I'm always learning and growing. That being said, um, let's take for example, if you were to look at any manuscript, not just ancient, the way you evaluate it is some of the things you all and people who are more learned in this field will confirm around this. You always look at the linguistic style. Is it consistent with the era it claims to be from? For just in case in point, English, right? 21st century English doesn't sound the same as say early 1900 English, which doesn't sound the same as say 18th century in the 1800s or the 1500s or the 1600s. So from there you can see, that's back on the linguistic style. You can gain some information as to its authenticity. You can also look at the fact that the type of paper, the parchment is written on, the ink, how the ink was evaluated, the chemical structure of the ink, what was used to it was written on, phrases, and the chain of custody. And you look at all these things, and you also look at, if possible, the age of the paper, what the paper is made of. For example, paper that's made before the 1960s didn't have certain chemicals in it. And you can also look at, it's DNA structure. So much to look at. And an expert, a person with a greater expert in the field of analyzing text and documents would be more would confirm around this. But the point is that when we look at it, most of what he's claiming to be, what Mr. Billy Carson, what he's claiming to state represents about ancient aliens, about Jesus now being crucified, about the Bible being false and the Bible being, coming from other texts, word for word, is all utter nonsense. Let me give you another point. Let's take, for example, the Book of Genesis. He claimed the Book of Genesis was copied from more ancient Sumerian texts. Well, the problem with that is, yes, there's some similarities because obviously they're from the same geographic location. However, if you delve beneath the surface, you look I did find that there's a lot of similarities. There's a lot of differences, as we say, as my mother would say. Um, yes, water comes in bottles, and so does gasoline come in bottles, but that doesn't mean they're the same thing. So in this regard, there are a few similarities, but when it delve below the surface, you can see that the ancient Sumerian text a bunch of pantheons of um, pagan deities bickering and arguing, to put it mildly, while the Genesis account of creation is the account as as laid forth by the God of all gods, the Heavenly Father, the created universe. Okay? Mr. Billy also mentioned the word Elohim as meaning one person. Well, let's take the word sheep. Sheep can be one sheep, or can mean 100 sheep. So you have to also, again, look at the entire text, look at the context and all those things. And Mr. Billy has gone on to literally mock the God of the Bible, and which goes to show that he's not a real scholar. A real scholar doesn't mock and berate others. A real scholar sits down and listens, speak, and learn from others. They grow. A real scholar sees himself as a student, learning and growing. Bill Carson is just a big mouth fug who's basically been made millions of dollars selling snake oil about the ancient alien nonsense and all this new age gobbledygook and attacking the Jewish people, and as the Bible says, I will bless those who bless you and the curse those who curse you. And Mr. Carson is now reaping that his reward. He's been exposed by others as a complete scam artist who has defrauded people of many, many issues. Now I've invited him on my show, and he has also far refused to do so. I wonder why. So, word of advice. But I digress one moment. He also made claims about the Ashura Sis. Yeah, the Ashura Sis has some similarities again to the Bible, but the Ashura Sis is basically a bunch of deities bickering and arguing themselves. While the Genesis account, when taken in its entirety, when taken in its fullness and its richness, yes, is about the awesome Creator, God of the universe, our Heavenly Father, God of all gods, Master of the universe, who create all things by His word. Okay? Big difference there. Okay. Alright. And so, word of advice is a real person who's about humility and learning and growing. A real scholar is about learning, growing, and talking with others and learning from others. Not somebody going around beating his chest talking about he's the foremost scholar in the world on ancient texts and he can read ancient languages, which is a bunch of nonsense. If he was to go into a room of real scholars on ancient texts and ancient history and ancient records and the Bible and science and physics, he will laugh at the room. Because a real, as we all know, a true scholar sees himself as a student, communicating with others, communicating and growing and learning from others. Not somebody who's beating their chest with all the nonsense. So, my word of advice is, as a public service announcement, we need to be very careful of those who make claims that cannot be backed up by solid scientific process or by what most of the scholars in the world would say. As we all know, if it look like a duck, quack like a duck, and talk like a duck, it is a duck. And the idea of ancient aliens and the idea of that the Bible is false is utter nonsense. Thank you so much for tuning in, and you have a good day. Good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the world today. This is the New Day News, and I'm your host, Dr. Sophia Catherine Woodley von Rothschild. I have a PhD in physics, and I also have a doctorate in history, economics, and politics, and history, economics, and politics, and theology. Thank you so much. And I also want to take this time to briefly look at current events in the world. Just to basically just a preference. I was very close to my father, and when I was growing up in the world, he would always tell me, "Ah, Ish, Torah, V, Safar, Daniel, Holikim, Yod, B, Yod." Roughly translated, it means history and the book of Daniel goes hand in hand. What book of Daniel? The one in the Bible. What that being said, first of all, let me preface this by saying, in many cases, our sages remind us that in when it comes to prophetic concepts, a day is a year in prophecy. Principle as laid forth in the book of Numbers, chapter 14, verse 34, Ezekiel, book of Ezekiel, chapter 4, verse 5 to 6, and also the book of Daniel, chapter 9. That being said, Daniel instructs us that there will be four world empires: Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greek and Macedonian Empire, and then Rome. When Rome came to an end, it, as also predicted by Daniel, it fall into 10 sections. Later, Daniel also instructed that there will be another kingdom to rise up among them, which was a smaller but very powerful entity. And from history, we can deduce that that was the papacy. The papacy then eliminated three of the first of the 10 kingdoms. And from 538 to 1798 AD, the papacy dominated the whole Roman Empire. If you look at those numbers, it comes to exactly 1,260 years. Now, why is that significant? That is significant because in the book of Daniel, it talks about 1,202 a time, 2 times, a half times, and divide of times, which comes up to about 1,260 days. Very interesting. Which, if from a prophetic viewpoint, as stated in Numbers, chapter 14, verse 34, and book of Ezekiel, chapter 4, verse 5 to verse 6. Now, a day is usually rather than a day is usually rather than a year in prophecy, and so we see that 1,000 from 538 AD, 1798 AD, that was actually 1,260 years, which correspond to the 1,260 prophetic days in the book of Daniel 2, Daniel 7, and so forth. Daniel chapter 2, Daniel chapter 7, so forth. So you can see that's just another proof that Billy Carson is not accurate, because prophecy vindicates the Bible. And how? By being able to accurately foresaw the future, as which was the four world empires. Now, when Roman at the end of that 798 AD, we see America start to rise up again, and America started came into form in the area of the world that was sparsely populated. The beast came from the world that was heavily populated, as signified by water, multitude of nations, as the Bible states, and land, which is signified the absence of a multitude of nations, as signified land. So, right about 1798, that period, around 1750, 1798, that was when America started to take form and grow to be a major world power, with its uniqueness of church and state and all that notions. So, and so when we look at things, if we really look at it from this angle, we can see that the Bible is 100% accurate, and the Bible is and will always be accurate, as it is the word of the living God, or even Father, who sent his prophets through the years to inspire and enlighten. Okay, and so what does it tell us? It tells us that yes, we're getting very close to the end of days. And no, I don't know the day, I don't know the hour, I do not know the day, I do not know the hour, I do not know the year. But we're getting close, and we always say we should get ready, be ready, prepared, and pray always. And as my father would say, in closing, here, ish Torah, ish Torah, the Safar, Daniel, holy hymn, Yod Biyod, which roughly translates as history, and the Bible and the book of Daniel goes hand in hand. Thank you again for taking the time to listen to me, listen to my humble take on the world events now, and we hope soon to see end of all this and something better for the future. And thank you again. And